Alright, so I've decided to finally go with this big old bathtub spout. It came with the shower fixture kit. There's the control knob, there's the shower head, and this came with the kit, so it goes with the look and everything. However, it's a tiny little shower. It's a little tiny little shower, like the smallest they come. So it's kind of inconvenient to have this thing, you know, have this thing sticking out kind of where your shins are and your knees are. But I don't know if you can see the scale, but I've decided that it's not that big of a stick out. It's about the same as the shower head. I don't know. I think we'll just live with it for now. And if someone wants to later come along and cap it off, so be it. So, hey, oh, you caught me.
Talking to yourself?
Talking to myself. So there's this, you can see how far the pipe needs to go in there. There's a pipe. Can you hold this upright like that? Stick this little bobby in there. It's a random piece of pipe. Can you hold that upright? And then take that. Can you hold that too? Okay, and then a mark right there. Okay, get that. Then that becomes the length I need to cut that. And then alright, I got the airflow going in here because it gets pretty hot. So we are ready to do grout. We've been doing lots and lots of research and prep. Did like a little dry run to make sure we have all our ducks in a row. I'll start with a situation that we have to work with, is because this is our first tile job. We didn't cut all the pieces perfectly, and what I mean is have, you know, an 1/8 inch gap. This is about an 1/8 inch gap all over. You know, we have 1/8 inch plus. We have up to 1/2 inch gaps. Like here's a really bad one. It's a 1/2 inch gap. A little less than 1/2 inch. 1/2 inch pretty much on 3 of the 4 niche edges. So to handle that, we have this shiny surface, glossy surface tile that can't be scuffed up. And there's 2 types of grout. There is non-sanded, and there's sanded and non-sanded. This doesn't say necessarily sanded, but I'm thinking to make sense of this, just think of this as sanded, and this is non-sanded. This sanded is good for gaps up to 1/2 inch, and 1/16 inch too. And this is good for up to 1/8 inch. And the reason is because the sanded doesn't shrink as much. So when you have a 1/2 inch thick, the big gaps, you don't want them to shrink. If you use this, it's going to shrink on you and then create cracks, that are going to leak. So that's the huge thing we learned. There's another big gap. So the approach we're going to do is we're going to go in here first. We're going to do 1 round of this first and get to a stopping point and just hitting all of the big gaps. And Rebecca came up with this great idea of using a pipette. At least we're going to try it. We're going to use a pipette for the reason of like creating as little overflow as possible. So she's going to get in there, maybe working in with her finger behind where she's putting it in to get it packed in. But with a pipette, you're able to minimize the excess, because the excess of that stuff has the potential of scuffing. We don't know yet. That's the plan. Anyway, and we don't know yet. It's going to be like kind of a experiment. And when we get all the big gaps, and we clean it up with the wet sponge, the wet sponges, we're going to stop and let it dry a little bit, and then assess if it's actually scratched here and there. And then the second phase is go in with this stuff and hit all the rest of it, the bulk of it. And to do that, you use this float. So when you're going in with that stuff, you're going hog wild, getting it all on there. It gets all over everywhere, all in the middle of the tile. And then you go in hog wild with the brush. And you're doing like round circles, and so there's the potential to scratch it. So with this stuff, you're not going to scratch it. So that's the thought process, and hopefully, what else can I say about it? Oh, and then we're gonna go back over when both are applied and dried and the tile haze is removed. We're gonna go in with silicone. Where the heck is that stuff? There we go. It's silicone, and it's all the same color, bright white. Bright white. Where is it? Oh. Bright white. Why am I not seeing bright white on this? Oh, there it is. Ugh, bright white. It kind of scared me. I had to go back to the store. I don't have to go back to the store. So, I think that's everything I can say. It's just kind of a big learning process that we had to go through, and make sure we're going to do it right. The consistency is thicker and sandier and drier than we were expecting, but patting it in with a finger seems to be doing the trick for filling in the gap. Alright, so we just applied the non-sanded, or the sanded, with all the big gaps all around. We're good. Getting the excess that's kind of dried with this, and then going with the wet sponge. Just drying real quick. No jokes. This sponge doesn't get the dried up excess in the middle of the tile. Try not to squeeze the sponge real good. Yeah, well, that niche is done. The fan's on, but it's still pretty hot if you can't notice. I'm doing aggressive upward strokes. And then I'm going to come back in later with different angles. Basically getting all the horizontals and my upwards from one way, and then like my next strokes would be downwards, so it gets it from both angles. And while I'm doing downwards, I'm also getting the verticals. It's really hot, so I'm sweating. Clean up on the bottom where everything lands on the shower pan. A little worried about the cleanup later, but oops. And on the floor, I guess. Trying to be mindful of getting everything consistently, not missing shit. When I was done with my downward, like first I go upward, and then I go downwards. When I was done with my downwards on this wall, I basically just like swept up all the excess and transferred it over to the corner. It was like there's still excess, but it's not. It's minimized, you know. It's minimized, so there's less to clean up. Like right now, I'm just gonna minimize it and transfer it. Sweep it up and transfer it up. Before I go grab more out of the bucket, I'm just gonna clean up. I'm just moving it. Okay. There's that little. Still not sure about that little bottom area. Oh yeah, there's this shit down here. Or stuff down here. There's enough. And then when you come in with the wet brush, it makes the final appearance look perfect. Because right now it looks like shit. It looks bubbled out. Okay. Going over that, the sanded stuff we did earlier. No, that's all right, because once, like I said, once the wet brush comes in, it all kind of looks like, makes it look nice, no matter what. All right, clean up the excess. Transfer. Not even worrying about the bucket until I run out of excess. Excess. No, I'm running out of excess, but I'm going to use it up. It looks like I don't even need to go to the bucket. Okay. That's all my upwards. Now I got to do downwards. What did I miss? Alright, I just want to capture the progress so far. We are removing with a damp sponge, all of the excess, the heavy excess, after applying the grout to all the remaining cracks. And this is important, you know, it's like drying quick, so we're trying to use a damp sponge to get the heavy excess. So you can see there's the, yeah, there you go. And it's a damp sponge. Damp sponge meaning like it's wrung out with no drips left. And then what is important now is we use this stuff, but we left a tiny little bit, like the corner of the bag, you know, a cup of grout, so that we can come back and whatever we find is missing, like pinholes, Oh, there's a pinhole. So it happens. It's inevitable, and so it's important to keep a little extra. A whole lot easier thing to do though, which we failed to do, was just keep all that extra that we had in the bucket, so we didn't have to mix an extra batch. There's a little extra batch mixer bucket. But yeah, that's because I cleaned out the bucket in a hurry before realizing that there was a use for the extra that we had in the first bucket. This illustrates the critical importance of having a bathtub spout. This is an old bathtub with mildew.
Uncleanable.
It's unsalvageable.
Ew.
Possibly flesh-eating disease ridden.